quite recently you made that quite longer post about general.
Sorry, that's my phone, which is the May ringtone.
At least she's being polite.
I'm turning that off now.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah.
Let's ask them some questions. So the new hero's just been announced right now, and I think a lot of people are going to ask us when they can play her. Can we ask that?
Sure, yeah. So we just announced Moira today at BlizzCon opening ceremonies, and I think people were really excited because they've been wanting a new hero, especially a new support hero. She's a really great healer, and players are going to be able to play her very, very soon on the PTR and sometime this year on the live service.
Okay. What was the goal in terms of design for the character, where that she's supposed to fit? Because as far as being a healer goes, I think a lot of people, they ask me, is she a main healer, right? But when she has a resource meter on her healing, it makes me think that she's more of in that hybrid slot where she has that duality to her.
I think she can definitely main heal. I think long term our goal is to try to get everybody to a position where they can main heal. I think probably Zenyatta is the closest to like a hybrid healer that we have right now, and a lot of that has to do with his Discord orb and his damage output. So maybe not so much Zenyatta, but Moira can definitely main heal. She does have that mechanic that shows the heal meter. She has quite a bit of throughput with that, and especially in team compositions where the group is together, her firing effect for that primary heal ability is very similar to like May's cone. So if your group is like really heavily together, you're doing an insane amount of healing.
So it hits multiple targets.
It does hit multiple targets.
We haven't played it that much.
Yeah,
It hits multiple targets, and it leaves somewhat of the heal over time on them as well. So even though it looks like, well, she might drain out and not always have a lot of uptime, she actually, once you play her, you realize like I can actually heal quite a bit. She has her alternate ability, which is the biotic orb as well. And she can choose on that to send it out to either decay or to heal. The heal one's amazing, especially if you have like that Genji who's always just, 30 meters in front of the group.
Yeah.
I just take that yellow ball and throw it out and go, Genji, go have fun. And he just chases the bouncing ball and is healed the whole time.
And there's a game on the other side of that. As Genji, you get to go after that thing.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of predict where it's going to be, do your stuff, and go after it.
Yeah. DPS players often are like dogs, they go out and let the intelligent healers sit back.
Fetch Genji.
He said that. I didn't say that. I made no comparison to dogs in this interview.
Play DPS too.
There's something I noticed in the trailer for her. She says a lot of other people's voice lines, and then at the end she has the highlight intro, which is also similar to Zenyatta's, where she's like got the orb, and that's why a lot of people think are comparing that. So is that all intentional, that she's like taking things from other people?
Yeah, I think it's less about taking things from other people, and almost like once you get to know her personality a bit, she's very much above everybody else, and I think it's almost like her way of looking down on them.
Yeah.
Who she is on a person. She's very intelligent, and she cares about her science and her advancement more than anything else. And really, it's not about, oh, how can I heal people? It's more about, I'm very curious to see what this would do to you. Do you mind being a willing subject? So I think with that, like more often than not, she's either mocking or looking down on people.
Yeah, I think the whole idea, especially her ultimate, the fact that it can do damage and heal, I can just think of so many ways that could be amazing. I mean, if your team are in a grav, you can heal your whole team. If their team are in a grav, you can run the whole team as well. So.
Well, the real trick there is to find those moments where you can line both of those up at the same time, and you're keeping your whole team up and taking their whole team down. And it's so fun to play that game of sort of moving behind everybody, lining everything up with each other.
How much healing is that doing and damage is that doing? Do you know?
Ooh,
I don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
No?
That's a
A
good
lot.
question for Jeff. Good.
Not
A ton.
Not transcendence though, right?
No,
not
it's not a transcendence.
No, it's not transcendence level, but it's a lot.
All right. Do you have any more new hero questions? I know we have some other stuff.
I think that's good on the new hero. I think maybe we can move towards other initiatives, perhaps, with like, I think quite recently you made that quite longer post about general
Sorry, that's my
Sorry.
phone, which is the May ringtone.
At least she's being polite.
I'm turning that off now.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah. That just happened. Sorry.
A great interruption. Classic. Where was I? Okay, so like towards improving the quality of the matchmaking experiences. Because that was, I think, as you talked about Mercy, matchmaking and sort of general toxicity among the community. Where are we going with that?
There's, I think there's long-term stuff and short-term stuff. So I'll give you an example of short-term. Short-term, we have a lot of problems, especially at the high end. And luckily, most of us aren't at the high end, so we don't get to see those moments. But matchmaking grandmasters is extremely difficult because there are so few in the world. And people get very upset when they see grandmasters match with people who aren't grandmasters. We're now also seeing a phenomenon where grandmasters have become elitist against grandmasters who are a couple hundred skill rating lower than they are. So we're even seeing differences of opinion of like, how dare you match me with that guy? He's clearly not at my same skill level. So some of the immediate changes that we're making and we're working on right now is shrinking some of the skill rating differential at the highest ends of Grandmaster. We think it'll make a much improved experience for people playing at that level. It's going to come at a cost, though, in that those players are going to have to wait for a longer time. It's particularly challenging when you're talking about regions with lower population or regions that are playing in the off hours. So that's one of the things we're looking at in the short term. In the long term, we really want to look at competitive play and talk about skill rating and why players are frustrated and why they feel like it's unfair, or more than anything that perhaps they just don't understand why it is the things that are happening. The systems behind skill rating are extremely complex to the point where at times guys like Aaron and I even, we'll have these moments of like, I didn't realize it worked that way, and somebody will be explaining it to us.
As intelligent as we are.
As super highly intelligent as we are. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think that just summed it up more than anything. But we will, that's an area that we want to try to make simpler and more transparent so that players know what to expect. I think a lot of times when that skill rating tick up happens at the end, there's a lot of confusion that players have of why was it only that amount, or why that time was it a lot, and other times it was very little. So that's something that we'd like to improve upon as well. And then, like you mentioned, the other thing that's a really big focus right now is improving the reporting systems to make Overwatch just an overall better place. Something I'm super excited about that's coming very soon. We did this pilot program where we could email people when their reports took action, and that was only limited. It didn't apply to console because we didn't have people's email addresses on console. It didn't apply to people on console, and it only worked for certain report types, and we would only do these little like pilot tests of it. But it was really successful, so we've ramped that up where we're emailing people more so when your reports to something. And then either later this year or early next year, we should have notification in the game for all players of, hey, a report that you gave did something to somebody, and like now we're giving you feedback. I think we've done a ton with the reporting system to ramp up the penalties and to make it really significant and kind of weed the bad behavior out of the game. But because players lack faith in the system from before, they're not using it as much as possible. So we want to get people really like, please use the report system, trust us, it's doing stuff, and give you that feedback so you know it's doing stuff.
So more and more on that.
I had something.
So did I.
Arm wrestle.
Speaking of wrestling, I hear how's that go? What's the meme?
Yeah, if we were to wrestle.
Oh no, you don't want to go there.
No, I was going to ask. You're talking about Grandmasters, and I totally agree. I play in Grandmasters anyway, so
Sometimes.
This season,
Shots fired.
I've been top 500 briefly. Okay. Something that happens is because of how certain heroes are balanced, the top of matchmaking is like the same 5 heroes. So a lot of the time you get in games with like 5 tracer mains and stuff like that. Is there anything like that going to be that you're looking at with the system as well to try and get more people on the right team with a better balance?
Can I qualify your question, because that's exactly where I was going to go too. I think a rephrasing of that perhaps is obviously the other end is like the more the punishment end when people are naughty and mean to each other, right? Is there ways that we can direct, or you guys, we as if I'm on the team, I wish, right? Direct attention towards eliminating internal conflict in the matchmaker itself. Like what he's basically alluding to is like a role preference queue. I know we've talked about that before, but things like that.
Or even if
ways
it's not a role preference queue, just is there something you're looking to build into it that just so it's more balanced in the teams, like not necessarily 2-2-2, but similar to it, to have more games where the teams are balanced with the heroes people play.
It's funny, we debate this. So
Yeah,
do
we
you want to talk
actually
about some of
do.
the challenges?
There's definitely challenges to that. I think that one of the great things about Overwatch is that the meta and the strategies that teams use, they can shift around a lot and they can be dynamic. And if you look over the whole history of the game since launch, a lot of times people say, oh, like we're really stuck with where we're at right now, but it has constantly changed. And one of the challenges with doing a system like that is that you're now looking to Blizzard to define what the right meta ought to be. Like, who are the people that are going to be saying, this is how many offensive characters we want, or this type of offensive characters in a map. And so I think that the problem is real, and I'm not trying to discount the problem. It is real, but it becomes very complicated in how we might want to solve it. And it's funny, like Jeff mentioned, we do talk about it. So it's something that we are talking about, and we do want to put energy against, but we're still kind of trying to work through how we will do that.
I'll give you an example of like one of the challenges. So like if you take Mercy, who's one of the most mained characters there is, and you say, well, it's really bad if there are a lot of Mercy mains on the same team is frustrating. So we should split up the Mercy mains. Like the matchmaker should look, do you main Mercy, and put you sort of away from the other Mercy mains. But one of the challenges is if you're not careful with a system like that, take somebody who just fills and is just sort of that last person who picks and says, I'll play whatever the team needs right now. Well, a lot of times they're going to end up playing Mercy. Or whatever the meta healer is at the time. Or like if you take a tank example, 6 months ago they would have, I guess I'm playing Reinhardt every match, and these days it's, okay, you're probably playing Winston or Diva. If we're not careful, and then the matchmaker starts to go like, well, you play Mercy all the time, you must want to play Mercy let's make sure there's no other Mercies in with you, so you will now be the Mercy, or let's make sure that you have to play Reinhardt, or you have to, it'll become this self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but that's a concern that we have, that if we're not careful with the matchmaker like that, and we make a lot of assumptions, just because you've played a lot of Lucio doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be playing a lot of Lucio.
The only issue with that, though, is what I would say, is that I feel like that effect culturally already happens, because the initial metagame of starting up in a match is you read at what people play. Like, maybe say I have my most time on Lucio, and they, oh, well, you're going to play healer, right? Well, if you look carefully, I actually play every hero, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell that when you just read the bar instantly, which is why I think we're leaning more towards a preference. Like, I would like to play this. Maybe even a tier list, top 3 or whatever. And maybe Phil is one of those. But in terms of forcing the meta, though, the only disagreement I have about that is that I think we can take some general broad strokes from the top level of play and gently put it in, because otherwise then you have these issues where, like you're saying, I think those problems still exist though, like, in the game as it's set up now. So
no, that's some good points.
There's no easy answer, obviously.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about role queue. That's a challenging one.
Yeah.
Role queue, I think there's more. I'm going to overly simplify it. I think there's 2 implementations of role queue. One is preference, and then the other is forced.
Yeah.
The forced version is we say you're going to queue for tank, and then we're only going to make tanks available for you, and you can't switch off a tank. But you can pick whatever tank you want.
That creates big problems.
That creates very big problems. Yes.
Yeah.
The other version is the preference one. I would prefer to play DPS. I would prefer to play tank. I would prefer to play support. That one creates a little bit of a different issue that's, I think, subtler and more nuanced. And that's that you get into this weird player trust category of players are very smart. They know how to game matchmaking systems, and they will just try to get in as fast as they possibly can or be able to play the hero they want the most. And in a preference type system, we would have to be very careful to design it in a way that players' expectations aren't, that they are now very angry that the team comp didn't work out exactly how they wanted, and that we could also gently let them down when we said, hey, we knew your preference was to play a DPS or your preference was to play Genji, but look, we're going to put you on a team that doesn't actually need that right now. It will make the system look broken, and it will make people very angry at us if we're not careful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's an impossible thing to do. Like Aaron and I were saying, we talk about, how do you design a system like that really delivers on what players want. Yeah. I mean, my dream, one thing I've seen on the forums that we talk about all the time, my dream would be more of a robust looking for group system. Yeah. And then players can like, hey, in my group, I'm going to let Aaron into the group, but you must play Zarya and Zarya only, and then you can play any of the healers, and maybe if we need somebody to switch off to Genji, you could do that, but Aaron's only playing Zarya. Like, let people, it's a social issue at a certain point, so I kind of lean more towards maybe there's a looking for group system that could help solve this problem in a different sort of way.
Yeah, that's really cool too, I think.
Final question, sorry.
Is it final
yeah,
question?
in my ear.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's... Okay, I think the last thing that I want to ask is actually about Doomfist, and if you have any plans for Doomfist, because after the nerf to his hitboxes become very difficult to use. So.
Sure. So we have been looking at Doomfist lately, and a lot of what we've been doing is looking at his bugs. There's certain issues that we want to fix with him, and the community has been very vocal about certain things that they would like to see addressed, and so we're kind of working through that right now. The difficult thing about fixing bugs on a hero and tuning him, it's really difficult to fix bugs and tune at the same time when fixing the bugs could affect the power level. And so I think the approach that we're trying to take is to get through some of the issues that he has, see where he nets out, and then see if there's anything that we need to do after that.
We were like one of the very few channels, we talk about balance all the time, we were like, don't change his hitbox because it will make him weaker, if that happens. And then when it happened, everyone was like, oh, it's really hard to use, I can't kill anyone. And since then I've just been like, I wonder what they're going to do with that. So
we get a lot of flack for hitboxes a lot of the time, and we look at them all the time, and most of them are not as bad as people make them out to be.
Genji's deflect is another one.
Genji's deflect is significant. Yeah. I don't want to say that that's not a significant hitbox.
But if you nerf it, then what can he deflect?
Yeah, I mean, we've argued that it needs to be that big because if it wasn't, it wouldn't deflect anything.
Yeah, and we've had it that way before. Yeah. And we heard, on the PTR, oh my God, Doomfist hitbox is ridiculous. It's so big, and we're like, it kind of is that way for a reason. It makes the character feel good.
Yeah, I mean, we argued that point. There's that famous example from a YouTube video of a Genji being hit. It's en route, and there's a Doomfist on top of the building on second point just before the doors, and the Genji falls below the lip of the top of the roof, and the Doomfist hits him, and it counts as killing him. And that one example looks really wonky, but latency, it's an online environment, and we were saying on the channel, like, you can't just look at that example and go broken. Right? He's a sharp character. He needs to have that to function properly. And if that's changed, then he might go away because it'll be very hard to play. And that's what.
And he has a massive hitbox too.
Yeah, and he, we knew you guys knew what you were doing. It's just the community.
Thanks.
Could you tell everybody else, please?
That's right.
We try all the time. People don't like that. People get mad at us.
We try.
Yeah. So, any hints as towards what you might do with him, or?
I mean, he summed it up perfect. We have that awesome forum post that lists out all the bugs, and we're either verifying or saying that's not a bug or that is a bug, and then if it is a bug, how do we want to fix it? And then after that, we'll look at tuning once all that's netted out.
Awesome. Okay. Jeff, can I be an analyst for the Overwatch League?
Yes.
Wow, that was the easiest
There you
one
go.
of my life.
Hired. Now get out there.
All right.
He's serious, by the way.
You got it.